It has been 6 months since we had students in our buildings. While we are still in a virtual model at this time, it is still the beginning of a new and exciting school year. Hello and welcome to One Troy at Home, the podcast all about teachers as we continue to learn and evolve with virtual learning this fall. I'm your host, Thomas Butcher, and today I am joined by two wonderful guests. He is an English teacher at both Athens High School and Boulan Park Middle School, and she is a part of our team at the TSD Preschool. Thanks for being here, Jimmy and Abbie Morang.
Thanks for having us, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You guys are like the perfect dynamic duo. Look at you. Your glasses are almost matching.
You know, we have been merging more and more into the same person since marriage, and the district has just been so helpful in making us just one identical human being.
Right? It all kind of happened at the same time too, didn't it? Because Jimmy, is this your third year with?
This is my third year in Troy as a teacher, yes.
And Abbie, technically your second year?
Yeah, I started working at the preschool last November, so it was like 3 months after we had gotten married. So I decided, I don't have enough in common with him yet. I need to work at a school district too.
One step at a time, I guess. You're figuring it out. Right. I want to hear your thoughts on everything because you do have a unique perspective being husband and wife, and you both work here in the district. So both of you went through the same thing at the same time. So what has it been like through this whole experience from the initial shift back in March to our new mode of operation now in September?
We had similar feelings back in March when the announcement came that we would be going virtual, and the original plan was for 3 weeks, and then we would see where we were at. And there was a lot of uncertainty because no one knew what everything would look like in 3 weeks. The announcement that we would be going virtual came very quickly as a directive from the governor, where the district had been making its own plans, and then those plans were kind of expedited. And it was nice to have someone at home whom I could talk to that was also experiencing that uncertainty. And usually when one of us was really worried, the other one was encouraging, but that flip-flopped a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like to have someone who was in the same boat was really helpful, even though it's like the same boat but different boats, because when we turned all the way to virtual, Jimmy finished the year out doing virtual, and the preschool kind of took a little bit of a different route there, kind of stopping certain aspects of the program. And so it was different, but we still had the same concerns about like the district as a whole and how the district's going to handle everything and move forward as a whole. And so there's a lot of relatability between us, which was really helpful.
And we were able to prepare as we were getting ready to come back in September, just both of us kind of merging into the new school year routine. We'd gotten into a summer thing, and then it was, well, we've got to start going to bed at this time.
Yeah.
And we're both waking up much earlier than we had been, and we come home and dinners are different because it's an end of the workday sort of sigh of relief where we get to talk to each other about how it is different and exhausting, but it's still working. And we're talking about the ways, so it's like, how are you making it work? And it's like, well, I've got to do new things and meet new challenges, but somehow it's happening.
Yeah.
Jimmy, how would you compare your virtual classroom this fall to what it was last spring?
It is far more like school. It's much more familiar. In the spring, we worked very quickly to get some sort of virtual model available for the students. And what we came up with was good. It covered all the curriculum that we needed to get to for the rest of the school year. But we weren't certain how long it was going to last, and some things were coming together more quickly than other things. So there was a lot less standardization between teachers even. Some of them were holding classes live over Zoom, while others were holding office hours over Zoom to consult with students on material that they had given them on their own time. And so there was a lot more student independence, and it was a necessary change. But as the new year has started, it feels very much like teaching as normal. The difference being, instead of speaking to a room full of students, I'm speaking to a computer screen full of faces. Attendance is being taken, grades are being given. There is peer-to-peer collaboration. We've had time to look forward to this. So we were able to make things, particularly with a virtual model in mind. I'm enjoying it much more. I think had I known all of this back in the spring, I could have implemented it a lot more effectively, but there was no way to expect that it was coming back then.
Right. I feel like it kind of sprung on you guys, and this time because you had the time to prepare, now it's going smoother for you, from what I can tell.
And it's different for you as well, not just that you've had to learn how to do this aspect of teaching, this new mode of it, but also, I mean, you've previously taught high school exclusively, but now you are simultaneously teaching both high school and also middle school. I know we just started, but what are your first impressions? Is it difficult to constantly switch back and forth?
I wouldn't say that it's difficult. One thing that certainly helps is the new block scheduling model with the A and B days has conveniently separated my time into days at the high school and days at the middle school. So I think if I had to switch back and forth on the same day, it might be different, but I can kind of go to Athens in high school mode and go to Boulan in middle school mode. They're not incredibly different. Part of that is probably because my Athens schedule is entirely freshmen, so they're just barely no longer middle schoolers themselves. Though the curriculum in the middle schools is very different than the curriculum at the high schools. There's a lot of focus on the workshop model. We have these units of study that they're really cool to work with. They're much more prescriptive than what we get at the high school level, but I think it's really good teaching. I think that we're being prescribed great medicine for the cure of teaching students, to use a poorly crafted metaphor. So that aspect is different. The students, so far, only just over 2 weeks in, I would say I'm not very attuned to the differences yet, but they are just as nice. And I have been arguing that they seem less shy than my high school students.
No,
I don't know, there's something about them that seems they have more energy.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something I wouldn't expect.
I was a little surprised. I thought that they might be more in their awkward preteen shell, but they're rocking it. Maybe they're just excited to be interacting with each other again. Yeah. Maybe the reintroduction of learning with their peers and with a teacher in front of them has kind of enlivened them.
That is a good point, and it does make me wonder, not to throw a curveball at you, but the idea that I'd like to think that younger kids aren't on devices as much as older kids, and so maybe having that connection to an extent where they're able to talk to each other in this kind of setting again is exciting to them. Does that kind of make sense?
I don't know, Thomas. I might push back on that. I think they might be on devices more. And I think their familiarity might help, because I've given some virtual tasks to my students that require some proficiency in technology, and the middle schoolers, they seem like it's like a second language to them, and the high schoolers need much more kind of guiding. So from my perspective, at least with my students, it seems like the middle schoolers are very comfortable with technology. And it's not that the freshmen that I have are not comfortable, but I've certainly encountered more barriers to understanding with them than I have with my middle schoolers.
It certainly does make sense when you put it like that, because if you're thinking about it from that perspective, is that technology is further integrating into our lives as we move forward. And as you have these children continue to be growing up in this further developed landscape of technology, it becomes more second nature to them. So it makes complete sense. When we consider all of the various school subjects that students are virtually learning right now, some of them seem like they would be more complicated or more highly involved than others to teach and learn effectively. If you ask me, English class at first glance gives the impression that it might be easier than others. A lot of the work that students have to do is founded in reading and writing, and anyone can practice those skills at home. Is this a fair interpretation, or how might that position fail to acknowledge the full scope of a class like yours?
I think it's a pretty fair interpretation. It's been nice almost to have them with these devices. I have not taught students on a one-to-one technology platform before, so the presence of technology was always just their phones, which I typically didn't let them have. But on the iPads, when I encourage reading, they now have the freedom to have ebooks or audiobooks available to them. If I would, in a normal classroom, have told them to take out a piece of paper, now I can tell them to just open Google Docs or Word on their iPad, and suddenly they have a notebook. I can upload a PDF of a reading, and they have access to it. I think that English is privileged to not encounter too many practical barriers in that regard. The greatest area I feel where things are more difficult is in that peer-to-peer element, those discussions. The breakout rooms are a very nice tool for that, but there is also the addition of a screen as a barrier that kind of divides the kids. And sometimes I'll hop into a breakout room and I'll say, are you guys done talking about what I said? And it doesn't happen often, but I have heard at least once before, no one has said anything yet. And I'm like, you've just been staring at each other's Zoom screens? And they're like, And so there's a little bit of that. The counterpoint to that, the advantage is the chat feature, which they're very comfortable with. And so if I encourage them to use the chat feature to discuss certain things, then that brings it out. But overall, I would say English, definitely one of the better classes to teach in a virtual setting.
Right, you're not trying to do a science lab in your living room.
I have spoken to some of the science faculty, and their frustrations are understandable in terms of what they're trying to do. They're very creative in the science department, and I'll see them sometimes on my prep hour when I'm walking through the hallways, and I'll look in a door, and they've got a camera set up, and desks are stacked, and there's pendulums swinging, and they're trying to get the kids involved. And I guess I haven't asked the students, but I would be interested if I was watching that as a student.
That's definitely a one of a kind experience right there. Yes. Hey, Abbie. So
hey, Thomas.
You are with our district's preschool, and the preschool is still kind of a new thing in terms of being it's in its own building now. So it's like a standalone thing. So a lot of people still aren't familiar with all the different things that are going on in there. So what kind of work are you doing at the preschool? What is your role?
Yeah, and so the preschool is different. It used to be where there would be a couple preschool teachers in each elementary school, and then they just took everybody and put them all in one building, which just made more sense. And so last year I was hired in as the building sub, and then that as time progressed, my official title of building sub stayed the same, but it kind of turned into a little bit more of an aid as well, because if everyone's there, then I would be able to help out in classrooms where kids would need some more support, whether for behavioral reasons or developmental reasons or anything like that. And so I was able to support the teachers and the kids that way. And so then this year now, I was fortunate enough to be brought back, and I'm a full-time assistant / floater, because I am an assistant, but I'm not just in one classroom. We float around the classrooms. And so there's the tuition preschool that's in the building, and then they're also The GSRP, the no tuition preschool, is also in the building. And something that's new is kind of like a pre-K, like I don't want to say young fives necessarily, but kind of like a pre-K setting as well, which is new for this year.
So that's something I haven't heard much about before. I knew that there were like different types of enrollment, if you will, but it's all housed in the same building. So if you have these different programs, would a class have a mix from those different programs, or is it separated?
So no, it would be separated.
Okay.
The classrooms themselves are a mix from 3 years old to 5 years old, as far as age range goes. But the pre-Ks are just in the pre-K classroom. The GSRP program is separate from the tuition program. So it's not a mix in the classrooms, but it is all under one roof. There's also, totally forgot to mention, the ECP program as well. And so there's multiple things happening under one roof, but it's kind of nice because everyone's there to support each other. We're all still teaching preschoolers, just in different programs and in slightly different ways, but we're also all using high school curriculum. And so there's a sense of like unity, and we're all on the same team, even if we're kind of doing different things.
And preschool is a little different compared to the rest of the district right now, because if I understand correctly, you have children physically in seat.
Yes, we do.
So why is that?
So online preschool can, when it's like well prepared, it can make sense, but it doesn't make as much sense long term, like the high school, middle school, even some elementary school. You're relying a lot on, these kids can't sit in front of a computer screen for hours and listen to someone lecture. They don't know how to use the computer. It's relying a lot on parents, which wasn't necessarily fair. They are trying to work from home, do all these things too. And so it doesn't make the same amount of sense long term as the rest of the district. And it's also, 3 to 5 years old is kind of like one of your most important times of development. And so a lot of it, as well as the content, has to do with the socialization. A big part of preschool is learning how to do school. Like a lot of what you're learning is, how do I hold scissors? How do I stand in a line? How do I talk to a teacher? How do I play with friends? How do I share? And so that was also a huge part of trying to get kids back in seat. To be able to give them that part of preschool. And because we have this new building, it's huge. And so it's a huge building. And because we have limited enrollment right now, we saw that we were capable of doing some social distancing and the right type of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, the right amount of people in the building at a time, essentially, and can spread out because of the new building that we have.
Right. Absolutely. Because if anyone who's been in that preschool, you know that the capacity limit in how you can space that out, it is the perfect. It was almost like they built it knowing that they would need something like this.
Exactly. And it was funny because I remember last year we were talking about like the common areas are really large. And we were like, these are all like, what are we going to use all this space for? It's like, this is what we're going to use all this space for, to be able to give kids space. And so it's actually, it's been a huge blessing, really fortunate that we have that building and that facility to use.
So what does a typical day look like in preschool at this point?
So a lot of it is pretty similar to what you would think regular preschool is. There's some things that happen beforehand, like before parents drop off their children, they fill out a COVID screening for their child, saying if they have any symptoms, if anyone in their household has traveled internationally, if they've gotten tested, things like that. The staff also do that, but the kids do that before they even get there. And then when they're dropped off, we take their temperature. So then we're all good to go, like from the get-go. But then, there's still, there's like small group time where they have time to like collaboratively work together in smaller groups. There's large group time with singing and dancing. There's still working on writing and crafts and art. But the thing is as well, there's washing hands in between everything that they do. And then we just implement it into the schedule. That's what they do. So they unload, they come in, they unpack all their stuff, they wash their hands. We do greeting time, and they come to the carpet, spread out, since we're able to do that. So they're spread out. Once they touch anything, we just go and wash their hands, and it's just part of the routine. And then there's also their lunchtime and their snack time, where they're able to take their masks off. And rest time is always right after lunchtime, and they can have their masks off for that as well. You don't want anything getting tangled in there during rest time. And then they also have time to be outside, time in the gym. Essentially, all of your regular preschool activities, just with some little things about hand washing, reminders about masks in between. And, it's a different feeling because there used to be 20 kids per classroom, and now we're looking at about 10. But I feel like the kids are able to kind of almost more quickly form like a sense of community within their own classroom, because they just have each other.
I don't know about you, but everything you just described, preschool sounds like paradise. If we could go back and do it again, I think preschool is the time to just kick back and relax.
My time as a preschooler crying and missing my mom. And listen, if I could redo it, I would redo it. I had it so easy.
I did not appreciate it enough while I was there.
No, I did not.
That's those wasted moments that you wish you had back.
Yeah, being 5 years old and in preschool.
I'm just saying, I would do it again.
So this brings up our next point is, how are the children doing during this time? Do they notice the extra precautions? Are they okay with the masks? What's that look like?
Yeah, the masks is the big question that whenever I tell anyone that I work in a preschool and that we have kids in seat, they're like, oh my gosh, are they wearing masks? And, they're doing better than I expected. I was expecting to just have masks on the floor all over the place. No one's going to know how to wear them. No one's going to know what to do. But because they've had the whole summer of, you have to wear a mask every time you go somewhere, the parents have really prepared them to have to wear a mask most of the day. And because they have breaks in between for when they, eat snack, eat lunch, go outside, take a nap, they're pretty good about it. Just like any other behavior that you're trying to reinforce in a preschooler, there's reminders. There is a lot of pull it up over your nose, or put your mask back on. But the kids they have fun patterns. They'll come to school different days with different masks. They're excited to tell you about it, or they'll be like, it matches my outfit. And so there's been ways to make it fun. And the kids are doing well. I think they missed school, they missed school, they missed the structure. And so even though things are different, the returning kids, the 4 and 5-year-olds, some of them do notice, and they'll say it. They'll be like, oh, that's new. We didn't have to have our own little table before. That's new. But then they're like, okay, but that's what we're doing right now. And so they kind of go with that flow. The kids who are 3 years old and are coming to preschool for the first time, this is the only school they know. So they're just this is school. This is what we do. You wear a mask to school. That's because they don't know it any other way. And, the teachers are adjusting as well. So you kind of just feel like you're in it with the kids too. You're all just adjusting together. We're all on the same team. But they do really well. We implement it with different ways of social stories of why you need to wear a mask. And they tell you, they're because it keeps us safe and because it keeps the germs away. When we're in line, we tell them to walk with zombie arms so that there's enough space between them and the person in front of them. We'll be walk like zombies.
And that sounds like fun.
It is fun.
It's a fun way to spin it.
My arms get tired though. They're good. My arms get tired. And so they do a really good job. They do notice some things, but they don't fight it. They just kind of notice it and observe it and then move on.
Now, your answer to the next question might be something like rewind this podcast 10 minutes, but why would you recommend sending young children to a preschool like ours?
Yeah, so what's really cool, what we have going on right now is depending on the comfort level that families have with sending their kids to school. They can be enrolled in our preschool and they can send their kid in seat, or they can do virtual. They can do full day or they can do half day. We have a lot of options for whatever works best with their family and their comfort level. The team of teachers that I work with are some of the most caring, patient, dedicated teachers I've ever met, not including you. I'm sorry. You are also one of them, but I mean the preschool teachers. And they have been preparing. They've missed the kids, and they are just throwing themselves into it, ready to support the kids in all of these new ways. And also just from a logistical standpoint, like I said earlier, we have the space to support the kids coming in and the social distancing. Not all preschool buildings are as big as ours and able to handle all of those changes. And you know, we are just like surviving and getting by. I thought that's what it was going to be. But, you know, as I hop from classroom to classroom, you know, we are sticking with core subjects from the high school curriculum. The kids are already writing their names. The kids are already counting and already learning about. I walked in once, there was like a diagram of a spider on the whiteboard because they caught a spider in the corner of the room and we're like going into like what an arachnid is. You know, it's like we're hitting core things and advanced subjects. We aren't just struggling to get by with the bare minimum of the standards and requirements. And the other thing is too, we kind of have a mix of teachers with a lot of seniority who have been there for a really long time, who know a lot of, you know, the history of being able to teach. And there's also younger teachers who are kind of fresh with new ideas. And we kind of have this really nice collaboration and mix of both of those. And I think that that's like a unique approach then that we can take as well, as opposed to just having one preschool teacher who's just doing everything on their own. We have multiple teachers of multiple ages from multiple programs all working together to help each other out to really benefit the kids. So that's my advertisement.
That was a lot. There's good stuff in there.
There's a lot of reasons.
As we wrap this up, what are both of you going to take away from this experience as we look towards the future?
I'm going to take some confidence. Personally, we are just over 2 weeks in, and I have not yet crashed and burned. I'm going to knock on my coffee table here because I'd hate for that to happen tomorrow.
You jinxed it.
I knocked on the table, though,
okay.
So we're okay.
Okay.
I have not crashed and burned, so I'm confident that I can adapt to situations as they arise with students. I personally am enjoying all of the different tools that I'm being exposed to with technology and virtual teaching. There was always this question among teachers of how can we introduce technology into the classroom in a way that doesn't just do a job we were already doing on a digital platform, but does the job in a way that couldn't be done without a virtual platform. And I'm learning so many things. We're all learning so many things that can be used later. And eventually, when we do have students in the seat, we can still take advantage of the technology that's available to us and bring some of these strategies back to them while also incorporating the best parts of face-to-face instruction.
I think the concept of like what you said about confidence is huge, because even just a couple weeks into, I'm like, if we can do this, then like we can do anything. Like we can handle whatever. As hopefully, you know, things with the coronavirus continue to improve, and even though it might not be like it was before, maybe closer to the normal we had before, and other situations that arise just from working with preschoolers show up, I'll be like, but remember when we were able to like safely and effectively teach these children? during a global pandemic. Yes. So we can handle this too. And so there is kind of a level of that, and just kind of like a new level of just like gratefulness and thankfulness for the job that I have and the people that I work with. I was really excited to be a part of the Troy Preschool, but to see us kind of all come together now, it brings about like a new appreciation that I'm like really fortunate to work with the people that I do. And so that's something that I'm definitely taking away as well.
Jimmy and Abbie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. You both are wonderful. You're both so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we had fun with you too, Thomas. So.
You're wonderful too.
That's debatable. Listeners, don't forget you can subscribe to TSD World Class Podcasts on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform, where you'll find all kinds of content and resources. You can also connect on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for listening. That's our show. Stay well, everyone.